across those areas, right?
How do you deal with the duplicate content?
It's an ongoing thing, right? But the good thing about it is when the search engines actually look in a region, when you get down to that regional level, they're looking at the regional level. So when you go to Colombia, an article showing up in Colombia and an article showing up in Guatemala, both Spanish, same thing, 2 different URLs, 2 different marketplaces. So it's not really duplicate because it's actually targeting that local market, right? So this is where the kind of globalization of search is paying dividends for really large publishers.
And did you have like different top-level domains for each country, or did you have subfolders?
They're
or subdomains?
Pretty much all subdomains, yeah.
All subdomains. Yeah. And how does it feel to work in those markets? I would think, just from a guts feeling, that it's a little easier and less competitive than probably in the US.
No, it's very different from the US. There's a lot of competition in the US, but the competition that you have in other markets tends to be very well established. Like the largest television channel in Brazil happens to have the largest internet portal in Brazil as well. And then they can leverage that television coverage to drive people to their website. So it becomes...
And in each country there's like strong media players that have strong websites.
Exactly. So it
and
becomes...
MSN is online only.
Right. Okay. So it becomes a bit of a challenge then, right? Because it's not like in the US, where in the US MSN is one of the larger players in the marketplace. In Brazil, it's a smaller player. And it needs to actually be very creative with what it does. And my hat's off to the folks in Brazil because they are amazing at what they do at MSN there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which of the markets were the strongest? Brazil because it's the biggest? Or I don't know all the markets well.
Yeah, no, they're all strong, right? Okay. The Brazilian market is growing, but it's not just us that's growing, it's the internet at large is growing there. You know, the adoption rates are huge, mobile usage is skyrocketing, the number of people coming online in Brazil is massive. I mean, it's just a huge market as a country. Right, so it's a little bit difficult to say which were the stronger because they have their strengths for different reasons.
Okay, so like any highlights you can mention that you still remember that amazed you from one of the countries?
Pretty much the only thing that really sticks out to me is it's working with the people. That's my big standout because SEO is the same, doesn't matter where it is, right? There are some differences when you get into keyword research and you try to translate different phrases or concepts between languages, that kind of stuff. But it was working with the people. You know, when
so
you work with folks,
they have a different working style at different nations.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Tell us some highlights.
So
that can be politically correct.
I traveled to Brazil and I was totally knocked off my game because I wasn't used to the idea of having lunch at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and having dinner at 10 o'clock at night, and then going to bed at midnight and coming into the office later in the morning. I'm very much up at 5 a.m. and get into the office early and that kind of thing. So, so you kind of hit that cultural wall, and you're like, wow. But it was an amazing environment. It didn't
How long did it take you to adapt?
About 2 days. It was pretty good. It was pretty
really
good.
Hard.
Well, I mean, you know all of the people, so you feel like you're working within a family, right? So you're on conference calls with them every week. You see them at the office. They'll fly into the United States. You fly down to Brazil.
Can they wake up
you really
early
know
enough?
These people. Well, I was up anyhow, right? Although the time difference kills me. 6 hours. But you have this real sense of family. And when I'd walk into the office, it didn't feel like going to an office where I was working. It felt like going to be with family members. And the conversations were open and back and forth, and people were trying things instantly.
Is it like the Latin character that comes into play there?
Yeah, that's the feel that I get. You know, I've traveled a fair amount, and it doesn't seem to matter whether I'm a tourist or I'm going for meetings. That same vibe exists there, right? It's fantastic. I love working with folks out of the UK and Europe. I haven't met anybody yet that I've been challenged with. Every culture I've met, especially in the online world, is they're all thirsty for knowledge. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to be successful. Okay. And everyone has that in common. Okay. So it's pretty exciting.
Okay. So do you think that, let's talk a bit more about the SEO side of things, because I think I got carried away a little because obviously you see how well I prepared for the interview. Do you think now that Bing is, gaining reach, is it challenged more by spam or less? Or
I think the concept of being challenged by spam exists no matter your size, right? Every time someone thinks they can exploit an area, they're going to go at it 100%. So really our focus is on just making sure that we're doing everything we can to manage that. And it's an ongoing approach. I mean, it's constant. Every day, several times a day, work is being invested to make sure that we understand what the latest is, the areas that we need to improve on our end, and if we see any new patterns developing, capturing those, testing them, and really understanding, okay, this is the new state of the union that we have to address moving forward.
Okay. So is the process similar to over at other search engines where they have quality search analysts on the one side that go from more from a, let's say, top view, and then they have let's say more close to user input that also think about the quality and then give feedback? Is it similar?
Well, about the most I can tell you is that we're continually investing in it, right? Yeah. The actual process itself and how it all runs, it's not really anything I can touch on.
Okay. We were also curious in the session where you just did the presentation or the SEO clinic, and you mentioned really like several times, really 3 times at least, like 3 out of 4 times about keyword density. It's like something I don't think so often of. Is it really those cases that matter to you? And did you just like run all the keywords of the site, reduce to the stem of the word, and then look, the percentage of how often that shows up, and then?
Well, I never said keyword density.
Okay.
I never said those words.
Oh, keyword stuffing you mentioned.
Right. Keyword
Correct.
stuffing I mentioned.
Sorry.
Okay. But it's interesting you bring up keyword density because.
So were you referring to their meta information?
Yeah, I'm just talking strictly about the meta keyword tag there because literally the folks are piling stuff in there that they shouldn't be, and it was obvious, right?
I mean,
it was
the examples were not so advanced. So
exactly. But on the topic of keyword density, it's something that a lot of people come across, and they say, well, I really have to nail this, right? I need to know what the percentage is and whatnot. Don't be chasing keyword density. Don't be looking for that. Don't be trying to figure out is 5% right, is 9% right. But write good content. Find the keyword you're going to focus on. Write good content for it. Be unique about it, and then read it out loud. Yeah. If it sounds good when you read it out loud, it's probably fine. If it sounds like you're saying the word too many times, you need to pull it out.
Okay. Do you think leading SEOs agree with you on that?
Some will, some won't. Right? But that's typical. Every time you sit and you talk with SEOs, right, you'll get a variety of answers. Sure. I've probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was a big proponent of keyword density, but figuring out what it was, nailing it down, and doing all of that. Then it occurred to me one day that every single page is rated against every other single page that it's fighting against.
Exactly.
So there's no way to predict what the best density will be.
But you can start analyzing if you're targeting, like, say, a limited amount of topical buckets.
Yeah.
You can analyze what the average keyword density is in that topical area, and then adjust your keyword density a little bit above the average.
Okay.
That would make sense, right?
How much time does it take you to do this?
It must be automatically. It cannot be handmade.
Okay.
With the script.
Well, like scripts. I mean.
So you're going to alter your content programmatically.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be unique content.
No, I mean, you can have unique content. Let's say, like, typical stuff. I mean, this is like really advanced topics, right?
Yeah.
So who would do that? Probably a price comparison engine who, like, mostly lives off SEO, right? So they would have, let's say, on categories, they would have unique content anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. They have it just to, legitimately they have it.
Right.
But then again, there are some certain areas of the page where you can add another keyword or two.
Okay.
If you feel that for this topical area,
exactly,
it makes sense, and you want to be a little above the average of your competitors in the topical area.
Right.
So that would make sense.
It can make sense,
but
right?
It's very advanced, so it's not for everybody. If I'm selling, I don't know.
Yeah, and the systems. And you need the systems to do it as well.
If you just have 10 different products,
right,
it's way too complex. But if you're running like a large-scale SEO operation, then it does make sense. Or you don't agree on even that.
To me, it's just not something I invest in. Right.
Okay.
Even on large-scale e-commerce, all of those things, it's not an area that I put time into. Simply because what I know what the search engines are looking for is content. I know they're looking for good, deep, rich, authoritative content. So if you can prove to me that your blue sweater is the best blue sweater on the internet when somebody searches for blue sweater, then I'm likely to return that page as the top result. If you're doing that because you're adding a couple of keywords on the page in addition to what it is, that's not adding extra content. That's just putting a few things on the page. We can see that. We can see that's not content. It's not text describing a product or going into more detail. We can see that it's a few words added to the page. And that doesn't carry a lot of weight.